Greetings, Earthlings. Oz here, transmitting to you from a brisk day on planet Oz. And some of you may have seen some articles that were floating around that basically were talking about the Israeli space security chief saying that there is a Galactic Federation and we are in contact with them. So, what is this all about, and why are we hearing about it now? What's going on? So, I don't know which federation he's referring to exactly. There are many of them, confederations, ambassadors, all of that stuff. And this is what I know. I'm drawing this from esoteric sources and everything I've been able to amass about this Galactic Federation idea. But in esoteric ideas, esoteric sources, there is discussed a Galactic Federation of Light, at least. And then there are all of these others. And so people hear that, and they immediately think that you're LARPing in Star Trek land, because it seems like we're anthropomorphizing human behavior and we're applying it to aliens who clearly would be animals and just, they would be lizards and they'd come down here and they would eat us and take our resources. In actuality, if you think about it, the ETs, let's say advanced intelligent ETs, they wouldn't need to learn the concept of the Federation or borrow it from Earth or have it anthropomorphized on them, and nor would any of them need to come down to Earth and explain to us what a Federation is and how we set one up and how it works. Logically, just intuitively, neither of those things need to happen. When minds start to gather together, they form tribes and then villages and societies, and ultimately, if you get up to a certain scale, there will be a connection between big masses of peoples and such a thing as, we call it, a federation. So just thinking logically, intelligent life throughout the universe is going to do this without being taught it. It's naturally going to form. So yes, it forms out there, and we are a reflection of the whole galactic experience, if you want to call it that. And so we have federations, they have federations, and there is a Federation of Light, at least. And so you hear that, and you might say, well, if there's a Federation, a Galactic Federation of Light, is there also a Galactic Federation of Dark? I can't say I've personally ever heard that phrase. I've heard the term Dark Fleet. I've heard of the manifestation of this on Earth going by a bunch of different names, but in general, if you put it into a big broad basket, you could call it organized darkness. And so, is there something akin to federations and confederations? Yes, there is. So, it would be a really big oversimplification to just say, well, the Galactic Federation of Light are the white hats, and the organized darkness are the black hats, and they manifest all things we consider negative and evil and all of that. None of these entities are perfect. They're all mixes to some degree or another. But for the purposes of understanding it in terms of white hat, black hat, it is fair in that, and this will also explain why we don't see a huge alien invasion and everyone getting eaten. The level up from where we are, and again, these are my understandings, take it for what resonates, but the level up from what we are is not a materially focused mindset. And this is because scarcity is not a real thing. It's part of the Earth experiment right now, but in the broader galactic experience, when we are connected with these interstellar societies, And we are able to partake in this technology that we don't have now. This is what is described, is that there are things like replicators and stuff like that we have had in our science fiction films and stories for a long time, and these things are real. So the scarcity idea isn't true. There's infinite water, infinite food, infinite gold, and so rather, so what is the difference? Why is there two factions, if you want to put it that way? White hat, black hat. What is this really at that level? It's not about material. It's not about capturing planets, resources, eating beings, all of that stuff. It isn't about that. It is about consciousness, and it is about evolving the consciousness of planets, stars, galaxies, evolving the entire universal consciousness. It's something to do, basically. Do we need to do it? I don't know. We don't need to do anything, I guess. It's just sometimes we rest, sometimes we run. But what we are doing in participating in these experiments is we are evolving the consciousness. And so, to that end, once you eliminate material, so you eliminate scarcity, you have infinite whatever you want. We also consider that these beings that are on these competing sides, as I understand it, are all doing so in a place of awareness of their own reincarnative journey. So, in other words, you can't die, really, and everyone knows it. The white hats know it, the black hats know it, everyone knows it. It basically, over time, if you just do a little personal, logical journey through that, you can see why having wars for planets and capturing planets and resources and killing and all of this stuff that we imagine at a galactic level, it really doesn't make all that much sense. Not in a reincarnative model, and not when the true competition between the factions regards consciousness. And so the easiest way to define them, because it doesn't really work in third density terms, it doesn't work in left, right, it doesn't work that way. It works more in the context of unity and separation. So basically meaning unity with infinite source or separation from infinite source. And I've said this in other films as well, in terms of the viewpoint of the cosmos, so to speak, neither is more or less valuable than the other. They are both integral to the machine, and it is these factions that manifest the experiments that we see, and these experiments are incredibly diverse, going on all over the universe. And yes, we participate in them, and we participate in material experiences in a material world where, yes, people can physically die and people do murder other people and whatnot, but we only see it as terribly as we do because we're not walking around with an acute awareness of our reincarnative path. We are walking around adhering to the laws of confusion that relate to the experiment, and consequently we don't wake up here knowing that we reincarnate. We kind of have to discern that for ourselves. But so these things seem very real and very intense down here, and it seems like a very cruel experiment. How can this experiment involve this stuff? Well, when we get to the other side of it and we find out that we can't die, it suddenly starts to make more sense. What was it all about? It's about evolving the consciousness. And the consciousness is evolved in part by experiments that happen with the material and how they are reflected upon by the immaterial. In other words, how the consciousness thinks and learns from those things that happen within the material experience. So this is a good thing. It does dovetail into rabbit holes regarding hybridization and so-called abduction experiments, but some accounts say that those are the result of pre-incarnative contracts in which the being incarnate here might not understand what's happening, might be confused, might be terrified, but when they get to the other side, they'll realize this was part of a deal and they agreed to do it, and it's all, this is kind of a bomb of info that might come to people as a lot at once, but while we're here, let's just keep going further. So these experiments happen, and just as an example of how that manifests, in the case of Earth humans, and if you're an Earth human and you go traveling around and you meet a bunch of other beings, my understanding is that you'll find these to be somewhat rare. Part of the Earth experiment, particularly, what all of the experiments are unique, but part of what is unique about ours is this emphasis on having thumbs and evolving with them, and the purpose of that, again, if the goal is learning, here is what would be learned. What do the beings do when these allow them to be so much more tactile? It allows us to work with material, physically work with it in a way that others don't, because in part they're using their consciousness. So they could shape things with their consciousness, or to a lesser extent physically. But what happens when you can really do it, when you can really dig in there because you really have the tools? Let's see what happens. And that combined with, here's another example of what I've read and understand to be part of specifically the unique Earth experiment. It is verbal communication. So elsewhere in the galaxy, most life you'll find communicates telepathically. And we do too, to an extent, and we will do so in the future to a much greater extent as we evolve. But that evolution from here to there is part of the experiment. It's part of the point. And if one wonders whether all of these other experiments out there, what they're like with a society of a consciousness like Earth, where we're not told what the bigger picture is, we're not connected to the galactic society, at least not openly. And so what do these other experiments look like? They probably run the full spectrum, but just for anybody out there who might be having a tough time right now for any reason, or just generally, I don't know, having trouble adjusting or dealing with the vibration here, for what it's worth, it is generally said that this is one of the most or more difficult places to be. It's one of the tougher experiments, so to speak. So you would be regarded in some sense as doing good work simply by the act of incarnating here within this experiment because it's difficult. But difficult doesn't mean don't do it. Difficult doesn't mean worth it. Difficult can sometimes mean you learn the most under the most intense circumstances. So when we fly that back up the flagpole, what we find is that there is the experiment of the thumbs, there's the experiment of verbal communication. There is much, much, much more that is talked about involving genetics and all of this stuff. And when you really dive into it, at first it can generate a fear response, and people don't like the idea of being experimented on or whatever, but it is perfectly natural, we think, the way that we largely, from the third density, handle the second density animal kingdom. I think most people would agree that while there are some bad agents out there and there is mistreatment of animals, it's generally the case, I think it's fair to say, that we are good stewards of animals that we keep as pets or animals that we raise for work or other purposes. I think for the most part, it is well-intentioned, it is good. And in the grand sense of evolution, if you're thinking about it as a goal, and I've talked about this, I've talked about it in the Law of One and the evolution of the second density. And so the evolution of the second density happens faster when they're exposed to the third density. So in other words, more animal consciousness is able to become third density consciousness, humans, hominids, whatever. More of them are able to do that thanks to the shepherding of the higher consciousness. So this isn't a negative thing. Should an animal be aware of what being a human-like being was and decide they didn't want it, it wasn't for them, I suppose, free will being what it is, they should be able to stay animals. But when we think about it, probably we think about our own experience. It's fair to say if we were once animals, we would want eventually to evolve to this state, have this experience, etc., etc. And so personally, I'm thankful to whoever out there may have been the human when I was the dog, or whatever experiences I've had with those intelligences that have helped me advance. Great. So what we will, according to this, come to understand is that these experiments are not negative, not ill-intentioned. They're simply the natural result of what happens when a consciousness and a society reaches a certain level. It's my understanding that, first of all, we take control of our own genetic experimentation and all that stuff. It stops being the domain of these factions who are competing for us now, and it starts to become our own thing. And then we will find that we end up doing a lot of the same things that we have believed they are doing to us. We find that we're doing them to ourselves, that there can be negative things and ill intentions, but there can be we can expand the capabilities of our consciousness and our bodies, and we can expand our spiritual capabilities and learning. There's all kinds of stuff that has a genetic component to it that we will then continue what is the unique experiment of who we are. We will continue it, but it's going to evolve to a new place. Who do we become then when we are in charge of what course that takes? And then the step beyond that, we will then shepherd third density consciousness from our fourth density place of evolution. We will shepherd them. We will do what we've always talked about, what people have said fearfully, that we've been experimented on, that we're hybriding, we're genetically. We'll do all of that. We'll do it. We'll do it to other societies, and we will not think it's bad. We will understand from that point of view once we're there. Once we're the parent, once the child can't understand what it is to be the parent until they're the parent. So once we're there, then we understand. It is for the good. It is well-intentioned for the good of the evolution of the consciousness, and we have been incredible beneficiaries of that, according to my understanding, and also seen some tough lessons, learned some tough lessons, had some tough experience with so-called organized darkness. But again, in a cosmic sense, these factions are part of the evolution, part of the iron sharpening iron, I guess you could say, clashing against each other, churning, like, the yin-yang symbol, the Tao. It's like that endless churn of the universe. This is what creates the churn. You need these opposing ideologies, and for what it's worth, in the Law of One, it does say that once we reach a certain level, we do realize that the two trees are not needed anymore, and we both unify. And yes, that unification happens in the place of light. According to the Law of One, we all end up on the light side. There ultimately is no victory for the dark. There is ultimately no hell, no evil, no whatever. It's all, we'll understand in time how it all is illusion. But that is, don't suppose I necessarily meant to go on quite the detours I did there in order to give the context of what a Galactic Federation is and how it works. And for what it's worth, it's also my understanding that the Galactic Federation of Light and Organized Darkness, they communicate with each other. It's but it does bring me around to an important point. And so I wanted to mention, first of all, this other channel, Galactic Service. I'll link to it. Looks like a couple months ago, this guy, basically he's channeling the Galactic Federation of Light, or claims to. Whether or not he's doing it is up to you, but I am linking and sharing with you for you to make your own discernment about it, because I feel like if you find planetOZ content interesting, you would like to hear what he says. And so anyway, as it would seem, the Galactic Federation of Light, as he is claiming to represent, but even beyond that, is the Israeli security guy saying that we're in contact with a Galactic Federation. I believe a former diplomatic representative of Canada has also for a long time, I can't remember his name, has for a long time been talking about this galactic community and galactic politics and our involvement in federations and things like that. So this has been out there. And but why is it so much more present now, if you want to call it that? Why are we seeing a story from Israel, and why is there maybe someone channeling for the Galactic Federation? Why is that happening now? Well, the reason that would be happening now is because the experiment, the Earth experiment, or at least this phase of it, is perhaps reaching an end. Experiments that we do don't go on indefinitely. Eventually, you consider there to be an end of the experiment, and you look at what your results are, and you consider what other experiments you could do from that. And so it evolves. But it only evolves if you stop the experiment from time to time, take in what you've learned, process it, and start anew. So this is not a cause for fear. Quite on the contrary, this, by most accounts, as I understand it, is an incredibly positive thing, and perhaps not a sudden thing. We don't know exactly how long or how quickly this would take, but the idea is that the scarcity that we experience, the limitation that we experience, the vulnerability, the mortality, all of these things that we experience are part of an illusion, the illusion for the purpose of the experiment, for the purpose of learning, but it is not our natural state. Some of you might feel that way, that this just, something about this whole realm and what this is all about, what I'm doing here, just doesn't feel like my natural state. Yeah, you might feel that way. It's actually true for every single one of us. It's not our natural state. Our natural state is in a place of infinite resource, immortality, love, light, learning, peace, joy. That's all our truth. That's our truth. This has all been an illusion, an experiment, and we've done it with purpose, and we've done it well. But it might be the case that all of us, together on this giant spaceship are going home. It may be time to go home. And home, again, not somewhere that we go to. Home is a state. Home is a place of our consciousness. Some might call it a paradise or an Eden, but it is that place that we go to that could just as easily be right here on Earth and could just as easily be tomorrow or today. But it's that place we get to when we realize all of these things, and we put behind us a lot of the old paradigms that have been serving us throughout the experiment, but perhaps they no longer are. So all to your discernment, of course, as always, what to make of this Galactic Federation of Light, federations in general, the whole idea of what consciousness does. I defer to you, but check out Galactic Service. And he gave me an idea. And I'm going to do this right now, and you can do it too. He made a public declaration on his YouTube channel, and he just put it out there, which was a call for help. And so I don't know necessarily that doing such a thing, I imagine you can do it just inside your mind. I imagine you could verbalize it just talking to yourself. Or maybe, if it helps, it might help to put it into a media format and perhaps upload it into the world, into the cosmic consciousness, just in case that is a factor. I'm gonna hedge my bets here. In case it's a factor, I'm going to go ahead right here on my YouTube video, and I'm going to say, Galactic Federation of Light, please hear this call that should we have arrived at a place of imbalance regarding free will and the state of our experiment, and if this imbalance is fairly corrected through cosmic law, through your intervention, and if a part of what is needed in order to do that is the call, then here is my vote. Here is my call. I have a dual citizenship on planetOZ and on planet Earth. So as a planet Earth citizen, I make my call asking for help. Help us. If we are out of balance, the experiment is in its right place, if it's right with the universe and correct to have a correction, but only needing that call, here is my call. And while I'm at it, hey, if the Galactic Federation of Light is listening, I am available to be of service to you. Call me. I've been waiting by the phone. Seriously though, I'm here. Godspeed to you all. Love and light.